Hey guys, Matthew here. So welcome to basically the first incremental episode of the Zero to Hero challenge. I guess you could call this a little bit of a repeat of the challenge we did last league, where I started with 10 chaos and built my way up to a headhunter. That being said, I think I've improved as a trader quite a bit. I've learned a ton since last league, and basically this video I didn't only want to start with 10 chaos. I wanted to start with an absolutely brand new character with absolutely nothing on him, on an account that I've essentially the same account that I used last time, so my secret account, with no currency, no nothing, a brand new character as well, essentially simulating a league start at the at later in the league than if you were to actually league start, because some of the things I did to acquire the currency you're about to see would not have been possible in the first day of a league. The reason why it works so well is because we are in the third week of a league. That being said, there's a ton of different things I could have been doing on the first day of a league that I could not do right now because we are way too late into the league. So I think those two kind of things balance out. Yeah. So this is a challenge that, like I said, is going to be made in incremental videos. I don't know if it's going to be once a day or once every incremental time that I feel like it's worthwhile to make a video because the strategy changed or something like that. This is the first episode, and this is basically the very beginning. So I started with absolutely nothing, like I said. Started on Twilight Strand and got myself to the ledge. The reason I got to the ledge is because the ledge is a very good zone to farm. It has the boss, which has, decent chance of dropping rare items on top of the league mechanic, and it's a very linear layout. It's the ledge. So I farmed that, and what I was going for was actually Quicksilver flasks. So I farmed some Quicksilver flasks, about 4 or 5 of them anyways, and I rolled them with alterations that I was getting from identifying rare items and vendoring them. On a Quicksilver flask that is very low item level, there is a very high probability of hitting the adrenaline affix or suffix, and it's something like 1 in 8. So for this strategy, that's not something I came up with. That's something that Tush came up with. So huge thanks to you, Tush, if you ever if you ever watch this video. You're basically the reason why I thought about doing that, and it worked pretty well. I rolled adrenaline on 4 flasks, and they all sold in between 4 and 10 chaos. The 10 chaos one was a perfect roll, 30%. That was actually really cheap for a 10% roll, or 30% movement speed roll. All the other ones sold for basically 4 and 5 chaos, and well, the 3 other ones. So that basically kickstarted the league with my character, my challenge with about 25 chaos, and that took somewhere in the ballpark of an hour or an hour and a half to set up. From there on, about an hour to set up. So an hour into the challenge, I had about 20 something chaos or whatever, and I started flipping very low tier cheap uniques. So for example, things like Victoria's Influence, things like Kikazaru, things like Pyre, things like Diane Dawn, things like Alberon's Warpath, things like Brawn Jewels. You can basically look at the VOD on stream if you want to see all of it. I was supposed to take a screenshot of every single trade, but I kind of forgot. Hopefully, from here on out, I will be doing that every single video, so I can show you guys every single trade and the reasoning why these things are worth what they are, etc., etc. There's not a whole lot to be said, though, for now, because all I essentially did was roll these Quicksilver flasks, sell them for a few chaos. Then I flipped some very cheap uniques until I had about 100, no, not 100, more like about 50 to 60-ish chaos. And I had a few items to sell. While these couple items were selling, what I did with my chaos is I started buying jagged fossils and frigid fossils one at a time. Basically a repeat of last league. I was buying 1 at a time, or 3 at a time, 4 at a time, whatever, how many people were posting, for 1 chaos each, and I would resell them, the fridges for 1.8, and the jaggeds for 2.2. As you can see, I actually lowered the price because they stopped selling, but 2.2 for the jaggeds. I did that until I had basically roughly 300-ish chaos, and then I went on to the bigger fossils, which are, for example, denses that I was buying for 4 chaos each, and pristines that I was buying for 4 chaos each. So I did these two, buying for 4 chaos each, and selling them for an exalt for 25, and 24, which means I was making about 35-ish chaos profit every single time I finished up a stack of 24, which didn't take all that long. Same thing for the jaggeds and the pristines, they would sell very, very quickly. So that was essentially all we did on the first day. It was mostly just crafted flasks, got a bit of currency going, crafted some very cheap uniques, which you can see in the VOD. Basically, the challenge is going to be streamed entirely, which means I'm going to be not only streaming the actual challenge, but also everything linked to the challenge. So I'm streaming and I'm showing basically the filters that I'm using. I'm actually making brand new filters for everybody to see so they can see why or how I make my filters, why I make them this way. They can ask questions about, for example, which the relevant stats on X item or Y item, and I answered all of that. And so we flipped for about 8 hours was the session, or not flipped for about 8 hours. We flipped for about 6, but we played for about 8 hours, just about 8 hours. And we got up to 6 exalts, 100 chaos, some random crap, and this here. So I did the math on this, and this amounts up to basically 1,276 chaos for this in the sell tab here, and in the money tab here. None of this matters. So just this here and this here amounted to about 1,275 chaos. So it was pretty good, but that being said, this took about 6 hours to achieve because, like I said, the first 2 hours was all about just getting the first few chaos going because that's when it really starts to pop off. Before you have that first chaos, that first 2-3 chaos, when you can flip a few really cheap uniques, you're basically on the struggle bus. And we didn't get lucky with like a chaos drop, like a random a lucky chaos drop or anything. So it was a fairly slow start, but we still made it to somewhat something that's pretty relevant. This, if I was to divide that by 130, which is the price of exalts right now, it's almost 10 exalts essentially, made in 8 hours, and that was from the very beginning of a character of a league to now. Obviously, like I said, this is 3 weeks into the league. Now, this is something I want to talk about a little bit. What I did that would not have been doable if it was truly the start of a league was the fossil flipping. Nobody would be buying fossils in bulk on the first day of a league because nobody has the currency to do so. And I would not be spending my currency to, buy fossils one at a time or 2 or 3 or whatever to resell them in bulk because I know there's absolutely no profit to be made there. So what would be the difference if this was the very beginning of a league? Well, instead of doing fossils, I would have done diff cards. And the diff cards I would have done essentially would have been the tabula diff cards, so humility, vanity, stuff like that. And all the items that are very good to level up. So, for example, items that are very cheap and good to level up with. So you could flip Wanderlusts, you could flip Courier Ward, you could flip Gold Rim, that's the helmet. You could flip all these cheap, very cheap leveling items. Now, if you don't know what are good leveling items or whatever, you can just Google Path of Exile leveling items, and there's a ton of treads and whatnot that talk about, X item is really good to level with, or Y item is really good to level with, and blah, blah, blah. So you can figure out all this stuff out. Also, if you have any questions, ask it in the description. I'm going to try to answer all of them. So there's not too much to talk about. Like I said, crafted flasks, got a few chaos, flipped some very cheap uniques. Basically, the flips I was aiming for were like buying for 1 to 2C, selling for about 10C. I did get some lucky ones. Like I bought a Hawa Claw, which is Hand of Wisdom in Action, for 3C, sold it for 35. Bought like 2 other Victorios, I believe, for like 1C each, sold them for 20 and 25, I believe. So definitely had some pretty good flips as well, but the vast majority was basically from flipping fossils and then flipping higher tier fossils into exalts, because that gives you pretty good margin. Essentially, though, that's basically it for this first episode of the Zero to Hero challenge. From the next episode onwards, I will be taking a screenshot of every single trade, since the trades will be a lot more interesting. Obviously, there's not much to show when you're just selling or buying like 5 fossils or 10 fossils, whatever. It's a complete waste of time. But starting tomorrow, when I'll be continuing this challenge, which is, by the way, New Year's of 2020, I'll be doing more expensive uniques. So it's going to be actually relevant to take screenshots of the relevant unique trades, or sorry, of the big meta unique trades because they're more expensive and people are a lot more question. They have a lot more question in regards to why you're paying this much, how much you intend to sell it for, etc. etc. And if I take all the screenshots for every single trade for the big meta uniques and also the small ones as well, then it's going to clear a lot of questions. At least that's what we're going for. That's the goal of this. So that's just about what I had to say for this video. Essentially, not that much happened, but I'm fairly happy with the results. Now, before I leave, I want to say, as always, huge thank you to my Patreon. The list is getting pretty thick. So Drool, Caleb, Christian, Fix, Enumag, Kai, Kara, Fungal, Diablo, Shane, Synsis, Tim, and Medusa. And then I do want to say a special thank you to Kasticus, MrCoffee, Emil, General XTC, Super J, KFish, kURTIS, and Neko. Essentially, all of you guys are making this possible, and I can never thank you guys enough. If you want to be part of these people who support me directly, you can check out my patrons. Otherwise, you can join the Discord server. Community Discord is going to be linked in the description. Otherwise, that's going to be Matthew signing out until the next one, which is going to be tomorrow. Going to be streaming the whole thing. We're hoping to log off with maybe 30 exalts tomorrow. Would be fairly decent, I believe, and that's if the API actually allows us to trade. Either way, though, that's going to be Matthew signing out until the next one. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you learned a little something. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.